This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at onthePonyExpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us as always. Guys, we've got a big show today. 2 more commitments, one we alluded to on Friday, as well as one that came on Monday night. But first, we are presented by our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team today to start scheduling your trips for SMU football season. Get a group of friends together, get a couple families together, figure out what jet works for you, and use the code PonyUpACC to get a discount on that round trip flight. They can handle planning everything for you, what time you should leave, get your transportation on the ground once you're there, and then get you out after the game and home in bed before you know it. No need to pack a bag for a hotel. Just bring your favorite beverage, or they'll have it on the plane for you already, and get ready for SMU's first season in the ACC with StatusJet. They're proud supporters of SMU athletics as well as the On the Pony Express podcast. So go to statusjet.com today and mention On the Pony Express, and David Henry and his team will hook you up with the game day of your dreams. Speaking of dreams, SMU's kind of on a dream recruiting run lately, and we're going to go back to Friday because that was when we left you guys on the Pony Express podcast with a big episode recapping another week of recruiting wins for the Mustangs. And they got another one on Friday as Jalen Cooper, 4-star wide receiver, did commit to the Mustangs. And Jalen Cooper, Chibolo Steel wide receiver, is one of the best wideouts in America and really has been somebody that SMU's been on for quite some time. And I can tell you, this is a refined prospect. He's going to come into SMU and he's going to need to put a little bit of weight on. But what I can tell you is that he has that work ethic that you want. He has the route running that you desire. Jalen Cooper, his Twitter handle and his Instagram handles are Route King. And that's kind of what his game is all about. And Jalen Cooper is one of the top wide receivers in terms of production in the country. We just dropped the latest on 300, and he's still in the top 150 overall prospects, 19th best receiver in America. And the thing I like about Jalen Cooper is if he continues on his type of trajectory with his production, I think he's going to be safely in the final on 300. You just can't really deny what he was able to do. He made a big move in the spring on our rankings with moving all the way up into the on 300. He had one of the most productive most productive seasons as a junior, catching 68 balls for 1,661 yards and 23 touchdowns. His average yards per catch is one of the best in the country, and he led his classification in Texas high school football, which is 6A, in receiving touchdowns. That is the type of production that you really can't deny is impressive. And that's why there were numerous programs in the state of Texas coming after him. And they were, in a recruiting battle with this one. And to give you kind of a backstory, he was one of the guys that visited for that May 17th Pony Express weekend. And a lot of people were talking about how there wasn't as many commitments as maybe you would have wanted to, but the reality is SMU made a big impression there, and that was where they really made that move and secured what I believe was a silent commitment at the time, based on kind of how Jalen talked about SMU, what he told us. Our On3 national recruiting analyst Steve Wiltfong put a pick in for Jalen Cooper right after that visit, and SMU was able to weather the storm here. They survived official visits to Baylor, Kansas, Houston, Oklahoma State. This one really came down to SMU and Baylor, and the Bears really stepped up in terms of offering a strong NIL package. And from what I'm told, he turned that down, and he was adamant about that on Twitter too. When some people were commenting on, "Oh, you picked SMU to chase the bag." No, Baylor has been throwing around a lot of money this cycle. Dave Aranda and his staff are certainly feeling the pressure to win big this year. We saw that with Baylor winning out on Kamorian Morgan, one of the top edge prospects in the country. Even Kamorian's dad mentioned on social media that they were going to get one of the best NIL deals, and sure enough, Baylor got him. But Baylor is spending money, and Jalen Cooper turned down a large sum of money to go play in Waco because he wanted to be at SMU. He believes in what Rob Likens can do for him in terms of developing him. And that's where you can put your production and your history of development out there, and players recognize it, and players jump to that. And that's what Jalen Cooper did. So he's a really mature young man. He wanted it to be kind of a surprise. Word started leaking out from the Baylor side that they weren't going to get him a couple hours before his announcement. But we never wavered in our on 3 RPM pick with Steve. And I didn't put one in because I didn't want to, mess with his moment and things like that. Because, he did still have some official visits, which always gives you a little bit of pause. But throughout the process, from what I was hearing, he was talking with SMU, telling them, all the right things, and it paid off. But he committed to them a couple days before, and they were able to ride that wave, of course, and keep him locked in. And so this is a big recruiting win for Rob Likens. He went out and had to go and grab multiple wide receivers in this class, and he's been able to do that. They've been able to continue to hang on to Dalen Singleton, and they flipped Isaiah Robertson from Texas Tech as well. And they still have Taz Williams out there as well as Carterius Brown. And so now that Jalen Cooper has jumped on board, SMU feels like they're in a really good spot now at that wide receiver position, with it being so critical for this class, with losing so many wide receivers off next year's roster. In terms of what's next, though, SMU is going after a pair of receivers right now that are approaching decisions here very soon. And one is Taz Williams, who is going to announce his decision Saturday afternoon at his high school in Red Oak. And Michigan does lead the on 3 RPM in his recruitment, but that is an old prediction. I'm not expecting him to end up at Michigan at this point. And I do feel like SMU is right in it for him. They're battling Penn State. That's kind of the feeling that I get in this recruitment, unless he's going to pull a total surprise. And I think for SMU, they're going to have to continue to show what a priority and early opportunity type of guy he can be. And for Taz, that's kind of the thing that really shook things up. SMU was kind of hanging around in this recruitment, and then they ended up getting him in for an official visit. They made a really good impression, and they're still right in it. And, Penn State has a little bit of confidence here. He's from the Pennsylvania area. And so the Nittany Lions are certainly feeling a little bit of confidence, but SMU has continued to chip away here, and there's some, just factors, including early playing time, that are really weighing heavily on Taz. So we haven't seen a prediction go either way on 3 for Taz Williams, but we'll be watching it pretty closely to see what he does, and as he approaches his decision, if they'll start to make a move. Taz has been kind of an up and down type of recruitment. You've seen different programs fill different levels of confidence, or he's named a leader. He named Texas A&M a leader last month. He took an official visit there, but I don't think he ends up in College Station. So there is a little bit of intrigue going into Saturday, but from what I'm hearing, that is one that SMU fans should watch very closely. But at the end of the day, you have Dalen Singleton, you have Isaiah Robertson, and you have Jalen Cooper now. And those are 3 really good building blocks at the wide receiver position. And quite frankly, with the transfer portal and SMU losing 6, maybe 7 wide receivers off next year's roster, if I'm SMU, I'm recruiting Taz, I'm recruiting Carterius Brown, but I'm not sweating if you don't get either one of them, because quite frankly, you have opportunities to go out in the portal and find instant impact guys that can be alongside a Jordan Hudson for his final year, or challenge some of the guys that have been on campus for a little bit now, because that wide receiver room will be very young next year. And so it is imperative that they hold on to the 3 they've got. There's no question about that. But they also have to go out and address in the transfer portal no matter what. That's why they went out and got Ashton Cozart before this season. They wanted a young receiver that can, show some talent on the outside and develop. And they've got guys like Jackson Lavender, Jamarian Carroll, Randy Reese on the roster, and we'll see how those guys develop over the course of the year. But the wide receiver recruiting is really taking a jump up in the last week, and they're also awaiting a decision from Carterius Brown, who's out of Arlington Seguin. He's one of the close friends of Ty Hawkins, SMU's 4-star quarterback commitment, and the Mustangs will hope to get Carterius Brown on board. He does have a top 10. He does not have a decision date set at this standpoint in his recruitment, but that'll be coming here relatively soon. I would imagine, a lot of these guys, they want to jump on board before their senior seasons. I like where SMU stands. He's got a top 10 of Baylor, Kansas State, Utah, Texas, TCU, Tulsa, Arizona State. I do feel like SMU's grabbed a lot of the momentum in this recruitment by getting Ty, and they had a lot of his momentum in his recruitment even before that. They were first to offer him between SMU and TCU. The Frogs did have Ty Hawkins on campus with Carterius Brown for that official visit, but of course, we know how that one panned out, and Ty Hawkins is now a Mustang. So I'm really interested to see how this one goes. I do feel like SMU leads for Carterius Brown. It's just a matter of when he makes his decision. And I don't know. If you get Taz and Carterius Brown, you have 5 receivers in the class. That's a pretty insane haul, just numbers-wise. But that is a group that Rob Likens can then take and develop and see which one rises to the top. And then maybe you add one elite transfer wide receiver. So that is where the wide receiver position stands. And SMU got a lot of good news at that spot last week. Before we get to the latest commitment, an All-American for SMU, get yourself an All-American type of backyard from our friends at AKM Turf and Greens. And we already had one on the Pony Express subscriber have Alex Carpenter and his team out to their house to do a bid on their backyard and creating an incredible space for your family and friends to enjoy. Ditch worrying about weeds, ditch worrying about cutting your grass. Create a backyard or an entire yard that is picture perfect all year round and that can really take your yard to the next level. That's why AKM Turf and Greens is offering $500 off a project with the code PONYUP or mentioning us at ontheponyexpress.com. They will come out and give you that full assessment on what you need to do to your backyard and give you the best possible deal they can. And whether it's doing some really impressive detail work around your pool like you see on YouTube, or whether it's doing an entire front and backyard with just turf. I saw one of their new projects going in where they did an entire front yard, about a half acre, it looked like, of turf. So a really impressive project for those folks, but they also did it to a really high level because they used AKM Turf and Greens. So email them info@akmturfandgreens.com today. Have them out. They'll do a free assessment. There is nothing to be paying them to come out and look at your yard. And then you can decide if it's for you. They can walk you through options, and you'll get $500 off that project when you use the code PONYUP. Monday night for SMU fans did bring a commitment from out west and way out west in the Hawaiian Islands as SMU landed Abel Hoopii out of Farrington High School, who was just named the offensive line MVP of the Under Armour camp in Maui. SMU went out to Hawaii to pick up this commitment. And I can tell you what, Garen Justice identified him in early April. They made the move in this recruitment, and they prioritized him from the get-go. And this is their top guy on the offensive line in terms of the interior. I can tell you that much. They love Abel Hoopii. He's got a really strong base, 6'5", 330 pounds. I'm interested to see just how his exact measurables and testing come back from the Under Armour camp that they did out there in Hawaii. But SMU beat out Hawaii San Jose State, UTSA. He did have Arizona State and Washington State offers as well. And they really jumped to the forefront of this recruitment after a May 10th official visit weekend. And this pretty much completes SMU's offensive line class, I would say, outside of a best available. So that is really what you wanted to see from SMU, is getting this commitment across the finish line. And that moves SMU up into the top 25. They now have the 23rd overall class in the country, the 4th in the ACC. So, of course, you watch the month of June go by, you watch the month of July kick off with a ton of fireworks for SMU. And I am really impressed with what SMU's been able to do. So Abel Hoopii, kind of a sleeper in the sense that he is not incredibly thought of by the ranking services, but he's also all the way out there in Hawaii. So I think he gets slept on a little bit in that perspective. But watching his clips that were out there from the Under Armour camp out there in Maui, he really dominated the competition. And I think there's something to be said for that. I like his base. I like how he plays with a lot of lower body strength. And for SMU to get him, you can develop him. He's physically ready to go, I would say. And he could step in potentially and play early along the interior of the offensive line. You also have Jamad Odoms, who's a top, on the cusp of being a 4-star offense, or on the cusp of being a top 100 offensive lineman. You brought in Drew Hill, who is also from out west, and you have Devin Ferris here in the state of Texas, as well as Jacob Mayava from out west as well. So Garen Justice continues to recruit nationally at a high level. He has some wins over some highly sought after prospects in terms of who he was battling against in the recruiting world. And now his class is complete. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offensive linemen committed. So really impressive haul for Garen Justice. And barring some, best available type of prospect, SMU is probably done on the offensive line for this class. So Garen Justice can just continue to recruit his group and make sure they stay pledged to the Mustangs. And they got a good one, I feel like, in Abel Hoopii, who will continue to build up that Polynesian influence that SMU has started with this class with him and Drew Hill. I think that's going to be a lot of fun to see how that develops just as a recruiting type of pipeline. But I mean, SMU didn't have to go out to Hawaii and fly in his whole family and do all those things, for an official visit. That's how highly they thought of him. I do know that, he was pretty much their top interior guy. He's got a little bit of versatility to him. So really highly thought of guy in Abel Hoopii. So Garen Justice, he went out nationally and a little bit in the state of Texas as well. And he completed his offensive line class with Abel Hoopii, who will play in the Under Armour All-American game in January. So I believe he also has a Polynesian Bowl invitation. So it was a really big family affair out there in Hawaii when he announced. So congrats to Abel and his family for committing to SMU and making that decision. So that was the 2 recruiting wins for SMU. We kind of looked at what's next at the wide receiver position overall, but right now SMU is kind of in a holding pattern as well, waiting on a couple of other things in the recruiting world. To kind of talk about that a little bit, we do want to note that they are waiting on some decisions. There are still some top targets on the defensive line that are going to make decisions at some point. And we're also now watching, Michael Turner. It is July. He's a 4-star running back that has talked about making a decision here in the month of July. And he's still got SMU as the on-3 RPM leader, which is worth noting there as well. He's one of the best running backs in the entire country, top 100 prospect nationally. He hasn't really, tipped his hand on when he's going to make that decision yet, though. He's going to continue to kind of mull over what's next in his recruitment and go from there. But, SMU has positioned itself pretty well in the Michael Turner race. There are a bunch of schools that are jockeying for position there. It's going to be quite the decision for him whenever he does make that call. But SMU is right there in the mix for him. there are multiple programs that are kind of jockeying there, and we'll kind of see where things go on that front. But he's still very much in the picture for SMU, as is Tyrone Winslow, one of the big priorities for Calvin Thibodeau in the class of 2025, a big defensive tackle. He's still uncommitted right now, but I like where SMU stands in that recruitment. That would be kind of a cherry on top in terms of some of the recruiting wins, I feel like, because anytime you can get a defensive tackle from the high school ranks where you don't have to go out and address it through the transfer portal, that is a win as well. And he's just kind of taking his time with figuring out when he's going to announce a decision. But SMU, again, is right there for him. We've really seen a lot of the targets for SMU make decisions. You know, Dalen McCutcheon is another one that's out there, but it doesn't seem like SMU is going to be the pick. He's getting close to a decision. He's a 4-star wide receiver out of Lucas Lovejoy. But you go up and down the official visit list for SMU, and pretty much all the guys are committed somewhere. So we'll be keeping a close eye to see what those two guys do. And another one that we do have to mention now, and this one could be maybe the most interesting recruitment of the cycle in the end, because Zay Gentry did commit to SMU after his official visit, but now On3 national analyst Steve Wiltfong did put in an On3 RPM to Wisconsin, and I followed him as well. From what he had told me, he had really good intel that the Badgers feel really good about flipping the McKinney, well, now the Anna High School standout to their class. He did take an official visit to Madison earlier this summer, but things had kind of died down. And he said he was, locked in and going to, stick with the Mustangs. He did an interview with me and he said that as well. But apparently still a little open in his recruitment, and SMU is going to have to fend off Wisconsin in this recruitment if they're going to keep him on board. So that is one that we're watching closely. He hasn't announced anything yet, but he did just transfer to Anna High School and is now going to play out his senior season there. And we'll see if the Badgers do in fact flip him. But SMU, they had their secondary class locked in. They were kind of settling down with the likes of Zay Gentry and Javion Holiday as the two corners, Tyron Polley, Sael Reyes, and Elijah Pratt as your three safeties. Since Nathan Tillman decommitted, this would be kind of a awkward deal, because SMU kind of slowed it down a little bit with Kobe Foreman, who was really high on SMU, and he ends up committing to Oklahoma State. If Zay Gentry goes elsewhere, the good thing for Ricky Hundley in a way is he can take his time. He can go out and senior eval some guys and see who he can turn the heat up on. But if Zay Gentry sticks and the buzz kind of falls off, and from what I've gathered, there are some people that would like to see him stay close to home instead of going all the way up to Madison. But we put those picks in on Sunday. It's now Tuesday. We haven't seen him make any sort of announcement yet, but we are watching it closely. And so this is recruiting at the high level right now. This is what can happen is programs don't let up on your commits. And we've seen SMU lose some. We've seen some that SMU couldn't control. Guys like Keelan Russell going to Alabama. They tried everything, but the prestige of the Tide went out. Ricky Stewart to Texas. Nathan Tillman ends up, decommitting after he does visit TCU, and SMU said that wasn't a part of the visit deal. And so he's no longer in the class. Cam Cullen stays home. Zay Gentry, though, was one that going into July had kind of said, I'm sticking. And so it is a tough thing when SMU has seen some other corners go elsewhere where they could have, maybe turned up the heat instead of just letting, Zay stick with the class. So SMU's prioritized Zay to stay in this class. We'll see if he has kind of a change of what we're feeling, and that would suck because we put in our On3 RPM picks, can't touch him, but that is recruiting, and SMU's trying to keep him in the class. So we'll be keeping a close eye on Zay Gentry. But otherwise, pretty strong week for SMU as they move into the top 25 in the recruiting cycle, or back in, I should say. And they have one of the best classes in the ACC. So this is how it goes in recruiting. You can kind of be in a lull and be waiting on guys to make decisions. And then all of a sudden you find yourself above every Big 12 program in America on the On3 rankings with your recruiting class. So really strong month of July already for SMU. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this recruiting only podcast. We're getting closer to the start of the season. ACC Media Days are going to start up not this coming Monday, but the Monday after that. So 2 Mondays from now, SMU will be on the leadoff day of ACC Media Days in Charlotte. I'll be there to cover it for you guys. And we will have all the updates from Charlotte as the Mustangs continue to make a run of series of firsts in the ACC. And that'll be their first ACC Media Days. So hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com for just $1 for 2 months using code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1. Look, this is the time of year to jump on board. Fall camp is just right around the corner. There's still some recruiting news to follow, but the season is almost here. Fall camp is almost here. I mean, shoot, we are 2 weeks away tomorrow from the start of fall camp. So what a week for that. That'll be ACC Media Days, and then they'll start fall camp because SMU plays week 0 against Nevada. So all the fun things for the Mustangs. So hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Not sure I'll get to another one this week. We are traveling back to Dallas to get all settled in for the run of fall camp and into the season and all those things. So going to try, but we just might have to go podcast heavy next week. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll do a mailbag one for our subscribers on the Pony Express site. And until next time, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode and appreciate all you guys who listen to the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU On3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.